episode 108, and this week I speak to Nicky Veitch, who went to the Joomla World Conference over in Rome and is going to give us a really cool roundup of the event.
Latest Joomla news, design tips, marketing ideas, and interviews with experts in the industry.
Beginner or professional, this podcast is for Joomla enthusiasts.
Welcome to the Joomla Beat podcast with your host, Peter Buey.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Joomla Beat podcast, the podcast all about designing, developing, managing, and marketing your website. Now, this week, like I said, we have Nicky Veitch on the podcast doing a quick interview and roundup of the Joomla World Conference, which happened a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to find out all about the highlight topics, what it's like to actually go and engage with a whole bunch of people at the event, as well as some highlights from the topics and sessions that were happening, and hopefully a little bit of a sneak peek to what might be happening in Joomla 4. So that would be really, really interesting to see and find out what's going on there. But let's get straight into this interview. So welcome, Nicky, to the podcast.
Stay tuned as Peter brings his special guest to the table. The Joomla Beat Podcast.
I have Nicky Veitch on the podcast with me this episode. So, Nicky, thank you for joining me, and you're going to talk about JWC, and you just came back from that. Well, not really just came back, but it was a couple of weeks ago, but you're going to cover your experience over there and tell everyone what it was like. But first off, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicky Veitch. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I've been using Joomla since version 1.0, but I've also been doing small children and studying and all that kind of thing, so I haven't been really involved until the last year or two. I went to JWC last year in Vancouver, and I had so much fun I decided to go again this year, and it was just as much fun. It was excellent.
Yeah, I missed Vancouver, and I missed this year as well. Where was it this year?
It was in Rome, in Italia.
Ah, beautiful Rome.
Yes, very nice. I managed to eat pasta just about every day, so and that was good.
You must have been sick of it afterwards, though, or were you still craving it?
I came home and the family wanted to have pasta for dinner, and I had to put a ban on them.
No pasta for you.
No pasta for me.
All right, awesome. Now, the biggest thing I love about the Joomla World Conferences is the people, and you know, I've made many Joomla friends over the years through these conferences, and catching up with them, it always feels like a big family reunion. What was it like catching up with people, experience community engagement on first hand, and who did you meet? Who did you speak to? Anything interesting?
I actually had a great experience because this time last year when I walked into JWC at Vancouver, I didn't know anybody. And I came out of a 3-day conference with a whole bunch of new online friends, and that prompted me to volunteer and join a couple of teams. So I had a really different experience this year because I actually knew people before I got there, and I got to catch up with a lot of those people again, and I made a whole bunch of new contacts. And it was actually really good because I joined some of the teams, and I've chatted with people online for the last year. It's actually really good when you finally meet face to face.
Yes.
So it was fantastic. I had a great time.
Did you bring the kangaroos or Vegemite? You did.
I did. I actually took your advice because I noticed that you'd gone with the kangaroos a couple of years ago, and I got a bag of kangaroos and koalas, and
yep,
it was actually quite a good talking point. I went round and I'm actually I've made a video, or I've started to make a video. I videoed a whole bunch of people from the international community introducing themselves and talking about where they come from and how they volunteer. And then we had some Aussie lessons, and I've
lessons?
got a whole bunch of videos of people saying g'day and Aussieisms, which I'm putting together for our Joomla Day Australia later next year. So it was quite good, and it got at one point somebody came up to me and said, "Excuse me, are you the kangaroo lady?" So I've been called that before, but that was. So it was quite a good icebreaker. Even the people I didn't know, I kind of got to know them because I was wandering around with stuffed toys.
And obviously everyone wanted a little stuffed kangaroo or koala.
Yes. So I had nearly 100 of them, and they were all gone by the second day. So
nice. I heard also you were giving out Vegemite.
We did have a bit of a Vegemite taste test. At dinner and breakfast, and that's also in the video.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Well, I guess that's a really cool way of engaging and networking with a lot of the community overseas. Did you manage to rope anyone in to come along to a Joomla Day Australia event next year?
I have. I've proposed that to several people, and we're just going to sort of see what we can arrange when the time comes next year. But quite a few people were interested in learning about Australia and perhaps seeing Australia next year. So fingers crossed we can actually get some visitors to make the big flight.
Well, it was where Mambo all started, down in Melbourne where you are. So it would be good to get some more people come to where it all started, I guess.
It would be fantastic.
Yeah. So I always found like the really big thing about meeting all those people is that you kind of build those bonds a little bit better, especially with the teams that you're volunteering in. You can get a lot more work done. I think there was like a session on maybe the second day where you got to work within your teams and volunteer groups. Is that correct? Yes,
it was. They had Joomla in Action sessions in the second afternoon. I'm involved in the Showcase directory, which was the first team that I joined.
Yep.
And I then joined the Joomla Community Magazine and the certification team. So we managed to bring Joomla certification to Australia for the first time earlier this year. And I've joined that team. So I kind of jumped between sessions, and it was really good. I hadn't previously met any of the people from the certification team, so I got to meet a whole new team in one meeting. And I had met a couple of the other people. I was actually the only magazine team representative there this year, and I went along to an operations meeting, and I knew a couple of people, and I obviously met everybody else. So it was really interesting. It was good to sort of see an insider view of how Joomla works, but I actually like sitting down and having a chat with people. It's good to do stuff online, but I actually like getting to know people and having a chat. So since then, I think that it kind of makes teams more productive. So it was really worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. I felt that exact same way when working with teams in person. And I think there are always initiatives to try and get team members to little mini sprints or little mini meetups in person to get things done.
Yeah, I think technology is fantastic, and we probably wouldn't be having this chat that we're having now without it, and we wouldn't be in the community we're involved in without it. But I don't think you can beat the sitting around a table face-to-face thing. You get a lot done, and it kind of helps to build relationships, and it just makes things smoother.
Yeah, definitely. So Joomla in Action was something that happened on the second day, and it was a 3-day conference. So what were some of the other topics and presentations that you went to, and what were your favourite highlights?
I should have said at the beginning, I'm not a developer. I'm in Australia. I work with small business, and I implement digital solutions for clients. So in some cases, I can actually get away with entire conversations without even discussing technology or coding or anything. So I didn't get to go to any of the development sessions, but I went to, there was something for everybody there. It was really interesting. the keynotes were fantastic. There was Vitaly Friedman from Smashing Magazine, and he did a really good keynote about the redesign of Smashing Magazine responsive web design. And it was a really fast-paced presentation. I think it's available on the Joomla World Conference Facebook page if anyone wants to watch it. It was so interesting, and I was sort of trying to scribble notes, but it was one of those sessions where if you look down to take a note, you'd kind of miss something really important. So I really enjoyed that one. There was a presentation about Joomla 4 by George, and at the end of his presentation, he pressed the magic button and released the first alpha. So that was pretty exciting.
What a way to release a version!
Yeah, he released a version live. It was very well timed. And I enjoyed Chiara, who is Italian. She did a really nice keynote, sort of linking Rome to Joomla, which was fantastic. I believe that is also available on the Facebook page.
She always does some really good presentations. They're always colourful. She's colourful herself.
She's lovely. Yeah, it's very colourful. It was lovely. It was just a really nice. I think everyone in the room was smiling. It was really nice. And Kevin John Gallagher was keynote on the second day. Mm-hmm. That was quite interesting. I went along to some sessions, sort of, extension-specific sessions. I'm just having a quick look through the timetable here at what I did. It's when you're actually there and you're jumping from session to session and you're taking notes, you suddenly get to the end of the day and you're like, wow, I've been busy all day and I actually have to rethink now about what I did.
You kind of need to debrief yourself after a day and sit down and reflect and work out, what did I absorb? Did I absorb anything?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I need to write things down for them to sink in, so I sort of have to go back to my notes and check what I've done. And there was also, obviously, there was some Joomla certification, which I should mention because I'm part of the certification team. They ran the first ever non-English language certification exam. That was done in Italian, so that was fantastic. And I think they ran, in the end, 4 or 5 exams across 3 days.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was really well done. The team did a lot of work to get it to the point where they could run it in a different language. So I believe there's a few new languages planned for the next few months.
That's really impressive. Do you know the pass rate for the people at the conference?
Not off the top of my head, sorry, but I'm sure that one of the guys will be able to put a comment under your podcast. Charles, I'm sorry, I don't know that.
It will just be interesting to see if they did better than the Australian crew, which wouldn't be too hard. We had a couple of people fail, but it is quite a hard exam.
Well, we had a 3 out of 5.
Oh, we did.
More than 50%. So I think that's pretty good for a first effort.
Yeah. It actually from what I heard about the exam, you'd really have to actually prepare and learn for it. So it actually put me off. I was going to do it, but I thought, hang on, I might not actually pass. So I think I'll brush up on a few things first.
Well, you're going to have another opportunity at our Joomla Day next year, Pete. So I expect to see you there. Yep,
unless I'm gallivanting around in another country, but yes, I would definitely be there.
I'm just putting pressure on you in your own podcast.
Yeah, I know. Now I have to do it. So in regards to some of these topics, I'll just jump back a little bit. But are there any interesting highlights that you can bring up in regards to what's coming in Joomla 4? Because I know a lot of people were waiting to hear some new updates and what's coming and when it's coming. Can you point out any highlights or any resources that we could look at?
Yes, George has actually got an article in the latest edition of the Joomla magazine, which has just come out today. It's he covers some of the key features. It's titled Joomla 4 Alpha is out. From my perspective as an implementer, the thing that I was most interested in was the new and improved Media Manager.
Fantastic. About time.
Yes, I know. He gave us a bit of a demo, and it just looked like it worked the way it always should have.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's going to be great. And they've tweaked the installer, so the actual installation now is a single page, really quick thing, and a lot of the options that previously in version 3 we would set as part of the installation are now done post-installation. So it kind of gets a site up and going fast.
Oh, I get you when you install Joomla from scratch.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. I was thinking in my head initially installing extensions, but you meant installing Joomla, yeah.
No, actually just installing it. And there was also the front-end template. I was actually in a presentation. I actually can't remember which presentation I was in, but they were covering the new front-end template.
Oh, yeah.
And while the presentation was on, I downloaded the alpha and installed it on my laptop so that I could play around with it. And I was sitting next to a lovely lady called Sonia from the United States who I'd never met before, but I think that was her first World Conference. And her and I were sort of sitting there clicking buttons, and we both agreed that it was actually a really good base template that you could use. You wouldn't have to necessarily go off and get something else. It's very functional, and it looks good, and it's fully responsive, and it's good. Who the people that created that have put a lot of work in and done a really good job.
Fantastic. Might actually have to look into it. Yeah, I know you're not a developer, but do you know if it's based on Bootstrap 4 or Flexbox or any other frameworks out there, or is it plain CSS? I
did hear them talking about Bootstrap, Pete, and that's the bit of my knowledge in that kind of thing. But people seemed excited about it, and I'm happy.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to assume it's Bootstrap 4, but in the show notes, I'm going to clarify that so everyone...
I believe it is, but don't quote me because, as we've already established, not a developer.
All right, okay. Everyone reference George's article in the Joomla magazine. That's where you got to go for
edition.
Yeah, December edition. Excellent. All right. Now, you actually had an article published as well, didn't you?
I did.
Excellent. Congratulations.
And I've posted it all over social media because I'm so impressed with myself.
Well, what was it about?
As part of joining the Joomla community magazine, we were having a team meeting a little while ago, and we worked out that I was the only member of the team who was going to be attending, and the community magazine is part of the operations team. And there was an operations meeting, so they asked if I could go and represent the magazine at the operations meeting. So my article is about what it's like attending the conference, not just as an attendee, but also as a team member and participating and volunteering and my experience of it. So I've got nothing but positive things to say about volunteering. I think it's fantastic. I've made a lot of good friends, lots of good contacts, and, just the personal satisfaction of being able to contribute to something that I've actually used for several years and not really contributed to. So I feel like I'm giving back a little bit now, so great.
Yeah, well, Joomla's open source. You don't pay licensing fees for it or anything like that. So just to be able to give back and contribute back to the community that helped build the software is, I think, a fantastic way of doing it. You get to make new friends as well. You get to travel the world, and all sorts of exciting things.
And hand out stuffed toys to people from countries.
Make them eat Vegemite.
Make them eat Vegemite. I did take some cherry ripes and some Tim Tams as well.
Oh, okay. You balanced it out.
So
with
it wasn't
some nice
all
things.
Bad.
Yeah, I remember taking Vegemite and Tim Tams over to India when JWC was in Bangalore. Tim Tams ran out straight away. I was walking around with the Vegemite for a long, long time.
I actually insisted that one of the guys take the Vegemite back home with him because I didn't want to have to take it back home. So I not actually sure which country it's ended up in, but
hopefully it made it there.
Yeah, I'm tipping it's probably in a rubbish bin in Rome somewhere, but anyway.
Oh, no, I hope not. Now, while JWC was on, I was following all the social media tweets and what was coming out on Facebook, and I saw one of your posts. I can't remember where it was exactly, but it was on one of the inside covers of, I think, maybe the program guide or something.
Oh, yes, it was the Sync magazine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. It's put out by some of the French Joomla community.
Okay.
But it was actually from, are you talking about the No JWC in 2018?
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah. It's actually, if you read some of the reports on the volunteers portal, it is actually documented in one of the board meetings, but the board has decided not to run the Joomla World Conference in 2018. And my understanding is that the view is that rather than spending a huge amount of time and money on one big conference, the funds are better spent making regional conferences bigger and better.
I see. That would mean not one big travel, but lots of small trips around the world if you're volunteering a lot or want to get involved a lot. But yeah. Does that mean any possible representation in the Southern Hemisphere?
I did make that point, that would be a very welcome thing. So we'll just have to wait and see there. I think there's going to be more information coming out in the new year. So we will see, Pete, and we'll see what we can get down in Australia.
All right. Okay, one last question to wrap up. Now, the Joomla market's been going up and down in comparison to other content management systems around the world. For example, WordPress. So what was the sentiment and the feeling of the community in general around that? I know when I was a part of the community leadership team, there was always talk about that, developers and extension template developers, etc., would always be complaining or mentioning that we need to market Joomla more, make the Joomla market grow more. What was the general feeling about that, and how are people looking at the future of Joomla in general?
I believe this was the biggest conference that they've held so far. I saw a number somewhere that there was 450 attendees, which was a lot bigger than in Vancouver last year. So obviously something is still going right. One of the I actually can't recall because I've watched some videos since I got home, but I believe one of the discussions was one of the keynotes was addressing who we're competing with and who our target audience is.
Yeah.
And the previous comparisons have always been with WordPress, but I think it might have been Kevin John was saying that we're actually competing with the Wixes and the Weebly's and the Squarespaces and the those sorts of markets as well. It's not all about competing with WordPress. And he also made the point that Drupal has kind of narrowed down their focus and is aiming more specifically at huge government contracts and not trying to be everything to everybody, and that's something that Joomla should be focusing on. I attended the operations meeting and also the Joomla in Action, and there was a bit of talk about just considering the audience and working out exactly who we're focusing on and that kind of thing. So I didn't get any kind of negativity around how many people are or aren't using it. From my own personal perspective, I actually don't really try to sell Joomla. When I go out and talk to clients, I sell the solution that I can provide for them. And I use Joomla to provide that solution, but I don't. A lot of my clients wouldn't actually really care too much about what I use, as long as they can use it and it's user friendly at their end. It doesn't really matter too much. So I don't know. I didn't get a sense that there was any doom and gloom or anything like that. I thought it was all very positive. It was a really good conference. It was really well run. The timetable was well planned. There was a good variety of everything. So I thought it was actually a really positive conference.
Excellent and fantastic answer in regards to providing solutions for your customer, not pigeonholing a product to them to use in general. And I think that's how everyone should be approaching website solutions. Have a whole array of different tools to use and use the best one that will suit the client and the customer for what they're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it sounds like a general sentiment from what you're saying is quite positive as well. I recall many years ago, I think when the first dips in traffic started happening, that's when people were kind of freaking out. Their profits were, I'd say, shrinking or not growing as much as it used to. So I think people would have seen some pressure, I guess, back then to innovate, grow, and connect with their audience in a different way. But no, it all sounds really good and really positive.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that, you know, we're all in a rapidly changing online world. So the things we do today are not the same things we did 5 years ago. And from my own perspective, you know, 5 years ago, I still had a lot of people saying, we want a website and we just want you to build it and we want to run it all ourselves. And I would build it and I'd pretty much hand it over to them. In the last couple of years, I've had more people come to me and say, we want you to look after it for us. We don't want to have to worry about getting hacked. You know, can we pay you? So I have maintenance products now. I run security for clients. So I think the changing environment, there's new opportunities. There's lost opportunities along the way, but there's also new opportunities.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from that perspective, I don't see that, you know, comparing it to a particular other product is actually that much of a big deal. I think if your profits start to drop because of a certain thing, then you just look for some new opportunities and, you know, branch out in a different direction kind of thing.
Grow, evolve, keep pivoting, and find new customers elsewhere. It's
absolutely,
it's just business, really.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, fantastic, Nicky. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I think a lot of people and the listeners will get a lot out of this, and thank you for volunteering in the Joomla community.
Thank you for having me, Pete. I appreciate it.
It really feels like you've taken my spot in the Joomla World Conference trips and volunteering in the community, so good on you. Someone had to fill the space.
I was asked several times where you were and why you weren't there, and I felt a little bit responsible that I couldn't answer. So, just because we have the same accent doesn't mean I actually know everything he does.
Yeah, I know. And, you know, Australia's like a small country, right? Like we just live down the street. We see each other all the time.
Yeah, it's tiny.
That was a joke, by the way, for all our listeners. Yeah,
we each live in a city of 4.5 million people, and they're not the same cities.
No, and they're quite far away from each other. You could travel across Europe, and it'll be equivalent distance to where we live. So, yeah.
All right, great chatting with you, Pete. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Stu.
Beat. Joomla Beat.
And thank you so much, Nicky, for joining me on the podcast. Now, all of the reference links and everything that we talked about during the podcast episode, you can find at the new Joomla Beat website, which is at pbwebdev.com/podcast. And there you can find all of the show notes, the latest episodes of the podcast, and much, much more. Now, if you liked this podcast, please leave a rating and review on the iTunes store. If you don't use iTunes, jump over to the Spreaker network where the podcast is hosted and give the podcast a thumbs up, or it might be a heart or a star. I can't remember what it is. Whatever it is, something positive, that'd be great. Also leave a comment in the show notes as well if you found something interesting or you have something to add to the show notes in general. It always helps other members, especially if I miss something as well. I tend to do that sometimes, but you know, we're only human. So, like I said, leave a nice rating review, comment on the podcast show notes, and until next time, everyone, please keep your websites safe and secure and backed up. Okay, bye.
You have been listening to the Joomla Beat podcast, bringing together the community of designers, developers, fans and users from around the globe. Joomla Beat. Joomla Beat.at